If you're thinking about moving right here to Utah, stop what you're doing. There's a right way to plan out a move to a new city, and there's certainly a wrong way as well. And after having countless conversations with different clients looking to relocate right here to Utah, especially the Salt Lake City area, I have perfected the process of helping people plan out their move and ultimately purchasing right here in Utah. And while everybody's process looks just a little bit different, there are some basic fundamentals that you're going to want to stick to and adhere to ensure that you don't waste your time and you get to a conclusion as quickly as possible as to whether or not Utah is going to be the right fit for you and your family. Okay, so research is going to be step number one. Now you can get on Google and ask your questions. You can get on Facebook or other relocation groups as well. But ultimately, what I found is that we have put together all of the information that you're going to need in order to make a decision about moving here to Utah. What's really nice is, with no pressure from talking to a realtor or an agent, you can just log onto YouTube at your convenience and do your research. We're here to show you exactly what it's like to live here in Utah. I am here to not only tell you, but show you what it's like to live here in Utah. You can see the areas, you can hear about the areas, you can weigh the pros and cons, and ultimately, this is going to lead you into your next step in the process. Step number 2 is going to make a list of all of your priorities. You probably know deep down in an ideal world what exactly it is that you want in your next home or in your next area or in your next community. So as you go through that research process, you can start to identify areas that check the boxes or areas that don't necessarily live up to the standards of what you're hoping you and your family's future looks like. And this list can contain a lot of things. It could contain good schools. It could contain walkability. It could be convenient grocery stores or shopping. It could be more space if you don't want your neighbors right on top of you. It could also be a community pool or other amenities that are close by. Whatever it is that you're planning on, when you do relocate, so there's no right or wrong way to come up with a list of things that you want. But I would definitely recommend ranking them in order of importance. As I talk to clients all of the time and they tell me, hey, these are my non-negotiables. But once we actually get into that research phase and we start identifying areas that could work for them, what we really need to do then is kind of prioritize which ones are most important. Are the schools most important? Or is your commute to work most important? Because you might not get both. So you don't need to know that today, but you need to be aware as you narrow it down more and more. Ultimately, more than likely, you're probably just buying one home to live in. And if that's the case, you're going to have to prioritize what it is exactly that you're looking for. Now, step number 3 is key, and obviously, me being a real estate agent, I know this can come off a little bit salesy. You don't want to do it too late. Far too often, I get calls from clients that unfortunately have done this whole process in the wrong order, and we're actually having to undo some of the things that they've done or the things that they've learned. We're having to reteach or re-educate them, so you're going to save a lot of time and headaches by reaching out to me in the beginning, or at least early on. Listen, I'm getting calls, texts, and emails every single week from people just like you looking to move here to Utah, and I would say reach out to a real estate professional now, whether that's me or not. What I'm hoping to do is have a 20 to 30 minute conversation with you and give a game plan so that you can see exactly where it is you need to take your home search. Essentially, this video right here is going to look very similar to that phone call. Now, when you reach out, we're going to talk a lot about the things that we're talking about right here in this video, but we are going to get things dialed in. I'm going to ask you clarifying questions that help me do one thing, and that is tap into my knowledge base and help lead you and guide you to the best place for you and your family. If you tell me that you want a really nice suburban neighborhood, or that you don't want to be near the city, or that your home needs to be a certain size or a certain age, immediately while you're telling me this, I am thinking through all of the different areas that I'm super familiar with, and I'm going to start identifying where it is that I think is going to be the best fit for you. You really need this personal guidance, and you can use my videos, but ultimately, a personalized approach is going to reveal things that might not even be in any of my videos, and I'm going to really be able to identify the places that you really need to focus your efforts on. which is of course going to lead me to the number 4 step in the process, because the 4th step is after you contact me, the first thing I'm going to do after that phone call is we're going to set you up on a search. The criteria that I'm going to be asking for when we set up a search is, what is your budget? What are you looking for? I'm also going to create a geographic area based on the search. Now, if you haven't narrowed it down enough, it might cover all of the city, like Salt Lake City, or it might include the entire Wasatch Front. We might have to set up a couple of different searches, but ultimately the goal is to show you your options so that you can compare the results to step number 2, which was that list of needs that you really want in your next home, and see if they are actually realistic. Because at the end of the day, I ask 2 questions to clients that really help me identify whether or not they are realistic in their budget and in their desires. How much does your dream home actually cost you? Because if we set up a search for $500,000, for example, and you're not seeing anything you'd like, I'd be willing to bet that if we bumped it up to $750,000, that you'd start finding some options that looks pretty good. For that reason, sometimes we'll set the search up more broad, not to bump up your search, but ultimately so that you can start to adjust your expectations so that you can actually meet the current market conditions here in Utah and in the Salt Lake City area. And then the other question that I'm going to ask you is, with your budget that you've stated, let's say it's $500,000, are you seeing any options at that budget that you're happy with, that you'd be comfortable putting in an offer on? If I send you a search of 100 homes and there are 0, then chances are we don't need to move any further. We're off somewhere, and we need to figure out exactly what it is that's off, and we want to readjust our search criteria or our expectations. Or, I know everybody hates this word, but potentially compromise. We have to look at the full equation and ultimately decide what's most important to you. And yes, there are going to be times, especially with higher interest rates, that you're going to have to compromise. So once this search has been set up, you've had a chance to look through all of your options and you have a realistic expectation for what you can get. Then your next step is going to be to plan a trip to Utah. Now, there's really 2 types of clients and 2 types of trips that we have found work best for clients. The first is for somebody that's in the discovery phase. Somebody that isn't looking to buy when they're actually in town. Maybe they're open to buying if it's new construction and it's maybe 6 to 12 months out. But for the most part, they're really just here for a discovery trip. For those clients, I have found that the highest and best use of their time while they're here is to meet up with me on the first day that they're here in town, up at my office for about an hour. And we really hash through everything that we've discussed so far. We go through their home search and come up with a game plan for your time while you're here. I can do a lot of things through video, but the one thing that I can't do is give you that feeling that you get when you finally walked into that perfect home for you and your family's next chapter. Now, a lot of people ask, how long do I actually need? Well, it depends on how much research you do on the front end and how narrowed down you are, but I have found that you really don't need more than about 3 days. If you have a week, that's even better, but 3 days typically works really well. You can break it up and it doesn't even feel so rushed if you have 3 fully committed days to exploring the different areas in Utah that you're considering. You can get a lot accomplished because of the questions that I'm going to be asking you. It is going to narrow down your home search much quicker than you would expect. Depending on if you're interested in resale homes or new construction, your time on this trip is going to be spent very differently. Typically, we're not going to be showing you inside of resale homes that you have no intention of purchasing for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it's not the best use of your time. You need to focus on the areas and the communities first, then the home. Number two, it's not necessarily respectful to the sellers that are needing to get their family and their kids and their pets out of the home for a buyer that's not actually ready to buy. Okay, so up to this point, we've met at my office, I've given you a game plan, you've gone out, you've explored the different areas every single day. At the end of the day, I'm going to touch base with you and we're going to review exactly what it is that you loved and didn't like about that day so that I can give you that game plan and cast that vision for your next day. Now, as your trip comes to an end, this is about the time that we're really going to set the timeline for when it is that you want to move. Now, we're having this conversation on our first phone call and we're helping you walk through what your timeline could look like, but it does get a lot more serious once you've come to the area. You've seen it for yourself and you go, okay, we're making this happen. Found the area we know we want to move to. That's when we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of the timeline and there are a lot of different ways to handle approaching the timeline for your purchase. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions that are going to make sure we cover all of your blind spots because everybody's move is different up until this part of the process. Everything's pretty similar for clients, but when it comes to identifying their timeline to move, there can be a lot of different moving parts. Jobs can be involved, kids in schools can be involved. You could have timing the market as a factor. You might have a home that you need to sell. You might have a lease that's expiring at a certain time, and we need to take all of that into consideration. And I won't even get every single scenario in this video, but I want you to know that once you've come into town, you've identified that you do want to move here and you kind of have a general idea of what it is that you want to call home, I can show homes to you virtually. I can send you new listings that come live that might meet your criteria. But the main thing is making sure that we have a game plan moving forward to help you navigate getting into a home right here in Utah. If you do have a home to sell, we're going to have to talk about what it's like to list it. Now, the good news is I have an extensive referral network, and I've found by doing this over and over again that it really makes such a big difference and makes for a smooth experience for our clients when we're working with an agent that we're familiar with, that we trust on the other side of this deal. So if you aren't familiar with a realtor in your area that you've worked with time and time again before, that you trust, leave it up to us. We have this amazing referral network of agents that we work with all across the entire country. And by connecting you with them, we're going to be on the same page and really help plan out the timeline. Now, there's two questions that you really need to be asking your agent in your current marketplace if you do have a home to sell. Those two questions are, how quickly do you reasonably expect our home to sell based on data, average days on market, and your current marketplace? And then you can use that to determine when it is exactly that you need to put your home up for sale in order to time out the sale of that home if you do need to sell it in order to purchase a home right here in Utah. The other question is, worst case scenario, what price is my home going to need to sell at to sell in a timely manner, and how much money from the proceeds of that sale am I going to net in order to take those over to my next purchase? Those two questions should be easily answered by any good real estate agent in your marketplace, and if, like I said, if you can't find one, leave that up to me. We'll make sure that the other side of the transaction is just as smooth as our side. Now, once you've done all this, the fun part starts. You get to actually pick your home. We get to find that perfect property for you and your family, whether it's new construction or resale. We get to submit offers, potentially negotiate, and ultimately get under contract on your new home. Now, here in the state of Utah, once you go under contract, it's typically a 30-day process from a signed contract until you actually close and get keys to your new home. There's a little bit of flexibility in all of that, but that is the typical timeline for most real estate transactions here in Utah. So once you're under contract here and you've already gone through your due diligence period, you've done your inspections, and you're committed and prepared to move forward all the way until closing at that point, you want to go ahead and get those movers scheduled as soon as possible and go ahead and actually start planning that smooth move right here to Utah. Now, there are going to be some other smaller details that aren't part of these major processes that we've laid out for you today, and those are going to be the reason that you need me, because every single day something new can come up. Something can change at work, something can change in your personal life, and you need somebody in your corner to be able to navigate that. Ultimately, you want somebody in your corner that does this every single day, that has seen it all. That is exactly who I am, and I do this every single day for people just like you looking to move to Utah. And so if that does interest you at all, go ahead and don't be shy. Pick up the phone, give me a call, shoot me a text, or send me an email. That way I can help you start planning that smooth move right here to Utah, whether that's in the Salt Lake City area or elsewhere. And if you're not sure where to start when it comes to looking at the different areas here in Utah, go ahead and click on this next video. Thanks.